Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much. You're such a wonderful God. And it's a privilege for us to serve you. And Lord, you have given us a great gift. Us with each and unique box through which we can make a beautiful noise. So we thank you for that. And as we learn more about you, about the music that you have created for us, and the instruments that you have given to each and every one of us, I pray that you will bless this time, and may you speak through Dr. Chunstry in a special way, that we will all be blessed in the end, that we will leave this place having met you once again. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Dr. William Chunstry.
Thank you. There's really not a lot of reference in the Bible on the creation story as to when music was created. Now, we know that the morning stars sang together at creation. We know that, in fact, at the birth of Jesus, we think the angels sang. The Bible doesn't say they did. Have you looked at that? It said praising God and saying. But I bet they said it in rhythm and pitch and harmony in such a way that we know that there must have been singing. How could you not sing if you were an angel that had incredible musical gifts? How could you not sing at creation? And then, of course, when we are all standing around the throne of God, when we're in heaven, with a multitude that we cannot number, what will we be doing there? We will be singing. We will be singing to our God. Music has a way of elevating our spirits, Pastor, I'm sorry, even in a way that sermons are not able to. But the beauty of vocal music is that it combines the words that authors and poets have put together with the genius of musicians that take these 12 little notes and make incredible compositions to God's glory. And I was thinking about each of you today. I've had, this is my very first time to your beautiful state. I landed at the airport a couple nights ago, and it wasn't as beautiful as I had hoped out there. But by the time I got down in this area, I am so impressed with the beauty of this state. We lived for a little while in Maryland. My wife and I worked at the GC for a couple of years together there. And one of the nice things that we enjoyed was the beautiful, all the lush greenery. Being from Southern California, you don't get a lot of that, and that's where most of our ministry was at. And you could be home this afternoon, sitting around a fire. You could be just being with family and friends, but and I really appreciate you coming out. Steve was very special. You know his spirit. You know his quest for truth and life, and to do God's will in his life and the churches that he serves. And those of us that get old and retire, what do we have left but legacy? Students that we have mentored and served. And so I would only ask Stephen that the best way to ever pay me for anything I may have done would be to pay it forward to those that you serve. So I'm just delighted to be here. We have an aggressive agenda. We could spend almost an hour or two on each of these items that you have. I'd like you to do something as we get started here, and as you think about what your role is in the music of your church and your ministry. Do one of three things. You have a pen, you have a paper. At some point, write down the biggest question that you may have about music in the church. And if nothing comes up, maybe write down what you might consider to be your biggest challenge in the church that you serve, in the music that you serve. Or thirdly, and maybe all three, what would be the most useful thing that I could bring to you to help you in your church, wherever it is that you serve? I'd like to get just an idea of who the participants are. If you are a choir conductor, would you raise your hand? I'm just curious how many conductors we have. 1, 2, 3, good, good, 4, wonderful. Choir members, where are you? Those of you that sing under someone's direction, good. Praise leaders are those individuals here that lead praise music in their church. Some of you will have repeating and duplicate capacities here. Does anyone here conduct children's choir? Okay, okay, children's choir. I've had the joy of returning back to the classroom in retirement and teaching children's choir at a little elementary school, an Adventist elementary school up in the Boise area. Are there any of you here that are worship coordinators whose job it is to put the worship service together and the worship flow? Those are things that music has an integral part of. Okay, let's jump right into our topics. First topic that we have on the outline that I provided is inspiration. Inspiration. What do you think I might mean by inspiration? Well, inspiration always, if it's relevant, if it's meaningful, inspiration comes from God. And inspiration works in a number of ways. There are very talented musicians and composers that receive inspiration from the Holy Spirit. And they write down on a piece of music what they are inspired to present with the gifts that they've been given. The role of the conductor, the role of the leader, is to look for that inspiration in every piece of music that we have. If in fact we cannot find inspiration in a piece of music, we may not have any business trying to perform that piece of music. Inspiration is, in fact, the #1 responsibility of every choral conductor. It is your job to inspire those that are singing with you in the music that you have pulled, or the inspiration you have pulled from a piece of music. Let me get onto my smart device here and my annotated outline. Now, to inspire someone many times is spurred on by, or is a big part of inspiration is motivation. You can have all the singers in the world, but if they're not singing with the kind of powerful quality that you want, well, maybe they're just not inspired to do so. Maybe you haven't captured their imagination in a way that allows them to free their voices into this collective choral environment. Now, let's face it, our emotions play a big part in the way in which we're willing to give up ourselves into the musical whole. And what is a choir, after all? A choir is not a group of soloists. A choir is a group of people who have determined to give themselves into this single body and to devote themselves and all of their faculties into being this choir. And the same spirit that inspires the composer is the same spirit that can inspire you as you look for the inspiration and as you look for the essence of what a piece of music that you have chosen, what that really, really means. Now, I'm going to jump right on down the line of topics, but if at any time you have a question about the topic that we're on, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. I will be very happy to answer questions as we go forward. How do we become an inspiring person? What are the components that make up for that inspiration? What is it that can captivate people to be able to give themselves into this? What personal qualities are there? Well, one is leadership, as we go on down in our outline. Now, leadership is earned. We earn leadership, and we think sometimes that leadership is a natural gift that people get by just being born leaders. We've heard the phrase, oh, he was a born leader. Well, I'm not sure I buy that. I think leadership is something that maybe you have a certain characteristic that brings a bunch of components together. But leadership is learned. Your life's experiences allow you to absorb expertise, absorb confidence, absorb things that when you step in front of people, they know that you are willing to lead them, that you have been given the gift of leadership. And I believe leadership is a gift that comes from God. And so as we talk about how you can inspire people, the concept of being a good leader is really important. I had a Pathfinder director one time tell me, Bill, one day you're going to be a great preacher. I was 10 years old. I was putting the flag up at camp. I had volunteered to come out at 7 a.m. and this old, fairly rotund Pathfinder leader said to me, Bill, one day you're going to be a great preacher. I laughed at him then, and I've laughed at him over the years, but I remember it, and it told me that maybe there was qualities about myself that could be used by God to help other people and to lead people in areas that I was passionate about. So as we look ahead, over time, we prove ourselves as leaders, and how do we do that? It takes courage to be a leader. It really takes courage. One of the greatest phobias that we have is standing in front of people. Being here with your face there. My very first teaching job was in North Dakota at an old school called Cheyenne River Academy. And my first class was band. And I got up there with my baton, and all the kids had their instruments, and they were putting them up where they belonged. And then I counted in the downbeat, and away they went, and everything was fine. Then I got to choir. And in choir, you know, you always have these little warm-up exercises and things. I looked up at these 60 kids in this choir, and they were all looking at me. And that was a fairly terrifying moment. When they had their instruments, they weren't looking at me. But when I got in front of them and they were staring back at me, that was a very unnerving thing that happened. One of the other unnerving things that happened to me was my first experience at an elementary school. I had conducted professional orchestras, I conducted college choirs, community choirs, high school choirs, but they asked me to conduct kindergarten children. And I walked into the rehearsal, and here are a row of about 15 kindergartners just staring at me. That was equal in its terrifyingness, to coin a word, to me, than the academy group was. But eventually, the kindergartners became my very favorite group, and even today, those are the groups that I really, really love the most. But what is it to stand in front of people? One of the things that makes it really not easy, but makes it better for you when you stand in front of people as a conductor, is the whole concept that you know what you know. What you know about your music, what you know about your art of conducting, what you know about the background of a piece of music, what it is that you know that you can impart. One of the worst things that you can do is to worry about how your hair looks, or if you pressed your pants in the right way, don't have two seams going on, these kinds of things. That, do I have spinach in my teeth? If you do, it's too late. So when you're in front of people, the idea that you know what you know and that you have something to give, because what is leadership after all? It is the lowest of the servant levels. It's not the highest. It is the lowest. You're there to serve. When Jesus washed the disciples' feet, what was he doing? He was showing them that they were above him. He was showing them that he was a servant. So a leader who is transparent, who has the wisdom and knowledge, and they know what they know, and there's no greater example of leaders than Jesus Christ. He knew what he knew, but he was a servant because he loved what he was doing. He was committed to what he was doing, and he had studied the scriptures. He knew where he was coming from. So as musicians, we have a very strong parallel that we need to be prepared. We need to know the things that are important. We need to understand the vocal mechanism. We need to understand music. We need to understand spirit. We need to be able to take our thoughts and inspiration and translate that into our body language, into our conducting, into the gestures that we use. And we may or may not have time to do some little conducting things today. I don't know. But at the same time, understanding that the motions that we make, the expressions on our face, the tilt of our head, things that we do as a conductor can make a big difference as we go through. And we'll talk about conducting techniques as we go forward. The knowledge of music, again, what is the spirit of the song? What is it that this song is trying to say? I've got a little piece here that I handed out to you. It's an arrangement of a praise song. Did you get copies of this? As the Deer. Let's look at that. As the Deer. Stephen, is Stephen still with us? Do we have an accompanist at all that can play this? Can you play? Okay. One of the most important relationships is between the conductor and the accompanist. As a conductor, I tell all of my ensembles the most important thing that you can do as a choir member is to read my mind. What am I thinking? I mean, that's a statement what was he thinking? No. What am I thinking as a conductor? Do I need to move over here? Are we?
No, anyways.
Okay.
No problem.
If the gestures that you make are meaningless, then just stop doing them. If your choir members are not keying in on the things that you're doing as a choir, as a sound, as a spirit that you're trying to develop, either you're doing something wrong or they need to be trained further to do what it is that you want them to do for your gift of music to be the most effective. So if, for instance, Steve and I will rehearse just a minute here. He has never accompanied for me, except in his audition for the vocal octet. This was a select singing group at La Sierra. And he came and he played the piano and he sang. And I asked him, would you rather sing or play the piano? Because I was also looking for an accompanist. He chose to sing, and I was so glad he did, because I have loved his voice ever since. So this is our first opportunity. I'm going to illustrate gestures that I use. These don't have to be gestures that you use. But if there's any kind of just a little tip or just a little piece of conducting learning that you can pick up today from the experience that I've had, I'm very happy to share that. One of the things that I do is I always demand that the accompanist, the choir, I give them, to start, I just give them one beat. That's all I give them. Many conductors will conduct a whole measure, and I do not find fault with that. But for me, I want them to be so clued in to what I'm thinking that all I have to do is to give them one beat. Okay, now, I just gave him one beat and he knew exactly what to do, but he had an advantage because he also sang for me for a number of years back in the day. So this was really not fair. But watch this. I'm going to change what he did by my conducting. Okay? That's a whole no.
Sorry,
All right.
Sight reading.
He's sight reading, and doing a wonderful job. Several points here, very important points. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted because I had studied this piece to find both the spirit of it and the way that the music is written. I'm a purist from the standpoint that I go by what's written on the page because I'm trying to draw the greatest spirit that I can from what this person composed. Now, there may be some of you that isn't an important issue, and that you know the accompanist is someone who is maybe short-tempered or has their own way of doing things and will do whatever they want no matter what you say. But if you really want that wonderful symbiotic relationship, there's a certain amount of demanding that you have to do. Kindly. Now, Steve, that was my kindly remark. Let's try that again. And just remember that measure 5 is a hold on before you move on. And there's a purpose for that. And in my interpretation of this, that's a moment of repose. It's a moment to think before we go on, and then the choir comes in. Now you all know this. As the deer panteth for the water, so my soul. Right? Do you know this? Okay, I'd like you to sing this. And it says women there. And so let's just have the ladies do that, and I will conduct you as we go. Here we go. This is the very beginning again. And the accompanist is watching. Very, very important that your accompanist is with you and that you know they, he, she are watching. That's a key component. And I will look over there, and then he will give me a look, and it might be a dirty one, it might be a nice one, but he will give me a look, and then I'll know that he's ready, and then I will just, without even looking at him, I'll be thinking about the music. There was a nice breath there. I gave just a little expressive crescendo emotion in my conducting there. And the longer we work together, not today, but if we were a choir, the more you would know that gesture, when I have that expansive feeling, that's reading my mind. That's letting you respond to what I'm feeling as the conductor. And that's the job of the conductor, is to have that. You demand it of your group. I mean, you can say, what do you think I'm doing up here when I do this? What do you think that means? Well, it means get quiet. No, it doesn't. That means expand the sound. So as you conduct, and let's do this as the deer. Let's start right there, see? Okay, and as the deer for the water so. Okay, that was better. Because you cued into what I was doing. You were paying attention. And as a conductor, you have the right to demand that. One of the sad realities is that we are so thankful for people to be in the choir that we don't want to offend them for fear that they're going to walk out the door. But I am here to tell you, in all the choirs that I've ever conducted, no one left because I was too demanding in kindness. No one left. They were gratified that they were being taken to a higher level. So I would not ever think, and I've never seen it happen, that now if you're in your personality you become a dictator or something like that. Yes, I've seen people walk, and I wanted to at times if it had been polite. But as you elevate their experience, they're going to want more of what you have. But you must ask for it, and you must demand it. You must do it again. When we get to the vocal technique, etc., I will work with you on the unity of sound that we didn't have this afternoon, but we will get to. Yes, ma'am, you have a question? So my point about leadership, about knowledge of music, is that you know when you want a swell of sound. You know when you want a diminution. You know when you want to slow down. And expression really is two elements. Expression is tempo, changes of tempo, and changes of dynamic. I like, generally, a phrase that swells to the center and then decelerates toward the end. Why do I like that phrase? One of the biggest reasons is because we tend to talk like that. Have you ever thought about that? When we're saying a phrase of music, we will bring out the point kind of to the center of the phrase. We will even raise our voice a little bit, maybe even get a little bit louder, and then we pull back a little bit. So as we speak, as human beings, we have that natural crescendo, decrescendo. We have that natural acceleration, deceleration in our voice. And that makes for a very effective line. And when you, as a conductor and your choir, get it right, the audience will pull into it. They will be drawn into it because that's how they think. That's how they feel a line of music. So if we sing, as the deer panteth for the water, so my soul longeth after thee. I shouldn't have come today. But if it changes to, as the deer panteth for the water, so my soul longeth after. If there's a little bit of an expression in there, that becomes more human. It becomes like more human thought than the old just pounding right through the notes. And I'll get to your question as to how you get there in a little bit. In your knowledge of the music, you need, obviously, to understand the spirit of the song. You need to understand what the melodic elements are. And we just talked about the melodic elements. The swelling, the decrescendo, the crescendo, decrescendo, the acceleration, the deceleration. Those are things that make music human. They make it expressive. But you also have to understand the harmonies. You need to know all the harmonies. You need to know, and I lost my accompanist, and that's okay. If you don't know what those chords are, then you don't know how to fix a wrong one. You don't even know when a wrong one occurs. And if you're following the spirit of the music, you will want those chords to be the right chords every time. Now, I confess, there are times when I have actually changed a chord just for a musical reason that I did have what I consider to be a valid reason for it. Once in a while you come across a chord that simply doesn't have the impact that maybe you want. But very rarely does that occur. Most of the time I stick by the music pretty carefully. Now, a couple of you have glanced over at the back row on your right-hand side. This is a translation that's going on, and it's I'm delighted that we have the translation going on. So please don't think that someone is being rude on the back row. I've done presentations in varying parts of the world where they had booths set up translating into Portuguese and French, and actually I think it was Swahili in one place. And sometimes they get kind of loud, but you have to understand that who it is that you're working with has a right to understand in their tongue the things that are going on. So, the knowledge of music is critical. And there are other considerations. For instance, if we're on a very high note, tenors and sopranos are on a very high, and even basses, altos never get high notes, so it doesn't really matter. But the other parts that are singing high notes, there are times that you have to change those vowels a little bit to accommodate where the voice is in that particular piece of music. It's called vowel modification. If you were singing, let's just say, God is an easy word to finish on. If you're singing, God, at the end of that, I hope I didn't hurt anything here. Singing, but if it's me or E, if there's an E vowel or an oo vowel, those are very hard to sing with the real dynamics up high. And so you have to modify that. Lord, If you're finishing the word with Lord, you can really get tied up. You know what you do? You open the vowel a little bit to make it easier for the voice to function. And instead of Lord, you just change it to almost an ah. Lord! And then you put the RD on the end. Lord! You go ahead and sing the ah. Doesn't hurt a thing. If they're wanting to know what the words are, listen to the altos and the basses, because they have all those words going on. The tenors and sopranos sometimes are so high that they can't sing the diction in the same way. It's okay to modify those vowels for those very high notes. So don't be afraid to do that. When you're in rehearsal, we're on efficiency now. Efficiency. When you're in rehearsal, you collectively have in your hand everyone's time. If you have a 90-minute rehearsal, if you have a 1-hour rehearsal, if you have a 2-hour rehearsal, and you have 30 people, and you waste 5 minutes, you've wasted a lot of personal time. So be efficient in your rehearsal. Don't drive a rehearsal to the point that it's not fun. But let's talk about rehearsals and efficiency in your conducting. When you are setting up a rehearsal, when you are looking at what it is that you're going to present that night, the most important thing you can do is to sit down, get a piece of paper, and strategize on paper how you want the rehearsal to proceed. Have a plan. Don't just show up and you have this many songs that you have to get ready. Have a plan. One of the ways that you can, obviously you can start with warm-up exercises, and I'll talk about warm-up exercises in a minute. In fact, I'll talk about things that you need to have your choir doing before they ever get to rehearsal, to be warmed up by the time they get there. Very simple things. I'll go over those in a minute. But in the issue of efficiency in rehearsal is really critical, that you don't waste their time. The conducting strategy that you put together must contain elements of warming up. It must contain working on sections that they don't know very well. You can even use some of those sections in your warm-up exercises, and I could show you that as well here, particularly if there's odd intervals that they have to use. Efficiency in error correction. Now, error correction is interesting. I sat in a choir one time, and this was after I had several degrees in music. And the conductor would stop and say, okay, let's go back here to measure 16 and let's do it again. And we wouldn't know why. We wouldn't know why. Why are we doing this again? Well, let's just do it again. She heard something that was wrong, but she didn't know what to do about it. And so we just went back and we did it again, and the same mistakes were repeated by those that were making them. So error correction is it's an art. It's like being a physician. When you go into a doctor's office, they're going to ask you all kinds of questions, and they're going to because something's wrong. Something's wrong. You don't feel right. Something hurts. So first of all, we've recognized that something's wrong. Secondly, then the doctor listens to what's wrong with you, and he devises a diagnosis of what happened to you. Why is it that you feel this way? Why is it that this hurts? Now, a lot of times you have to go through a whole bunch of tests, but that's the process of diagnosing what's wrong. And then thirdly, there is a fix, a heal, a strategy for dealing with what it is wrong. It's correcting what was wrong. And the analogy breaks down when we get into serious health issues, of course. But that's the same thing in music. When you hear that something is wrong, if you know the music well enough, you should be able to identify what it is that's wrong. First of all, you recognize something's wrong. Secondly, then, you look at what it is that was wrong. Now, the tenors are singing a C natural instead of a C sharp. That's what was wrong. Then, you fix it by going over that with the tenors. Tenors, you play, you listen, you sing, you work it out, and then the tenors do it. I was a terrible person once in a rehearsal. The altos had a line that, and this was in a choral festival with like 300 students. And the altos were coming down the line, and I was singing tenor, and I was being a jerk. And I would sing with their part, but at the very end, when they got done, I would sing one more note. And the conductor, well, now which? Okay, no, that's not right. No. And I had my head down, my little, the wrong note. No, altos, no. Of course, I'm over there, just kind of, and the guys are on me going, oh, don't. And I said, shh. He never caught that it was me. I've never apologized to him to this day, but it was so frustrating for him because he was not able to figure out what was wrong, and it just was something that kind of messed things up. Now, you're not going to have any of those kind of people in your choir, but you should know your music well enough to know that was a wrong note to have. Finally, he let it go, but I never did it again, and so in concert it worked out great. But that's a kind of crude example of how you figure out how to fix something. And he tried to fix it, and you may never be able to fix it. And there are some voices, friends, that you may never be able to fix either. There may be some quality, and we'll talk about vocal quality in our second session this afternoon, and maybe how to respond to some of those vocal challenges that you face as a conductor. So error correction, you have then the you have the recognition of it, you have the diagnosis of it, and then you have the fix. You have to know how to fix it. And learning about the voice really helps. Learning about the mechanism of the voice, how the voice works, what the voice can and can't do, what it should and shouldn't do, and we'll go over a lot of that as we go. Any questions before we keep moving here? I told you a little story, didn't I? Right here about myself when I did that silly thing in the festival choir. Every now and then, your choir needs a little break. You can't sing for 90 minutes. Most people don't have the capacity to sing for 90 minutes. And so, once in a while, you can stop and tell a little personal story if you want to, if it's short, and if it has some point to what it is that they're doing. That's okay. Now, there will be some people that will just want to plow ahead for the 90 minutes, but the average voice just can't sing that long. So you've got to let the voice rest, let people get a drink of water from their bottle, etc. Singers can do more than they think they can if they are properly trained. The greatest joys that I've ever had in teaching is taking people beyond what they thought they could do. For people to achieve a sound that they didn't think they could achieve is the most motivating thing that you can provide for your choir. I didn't think we could do that, but we did. When I was in academy, we had a student teacher that came from the college. Excuse me while I drink. I don't know what the difference is between smart water and dumb water, but I got the smart bottle today. She came from the college, and she decided that she wanted our academy choir of about 25 singers do Beethoven's Hallelujah from the Mount of Olives. Now, if you've never done Beethoven's Hallelujah from the Mount of Olives, it is a grand, grand piece of music. And it is one, in fact, that I imagine myself there on the sea of glass looking up at Jesus and singing, Hallelujah. Hallelujah, and it goes this grand, and the worst part is the accompaniment, because it goes on and on and on, and it is an awful piece because it wasn't written for piano, it was written for an orchestra. But she challenged us to do that, and we looked at that. Her professors told her that wasn't going to happen, that she couldn't get us to do it. And it was one of the most motivating things because we learned that piece, we sang for graduation, and we sang it well. In the middle of it is a big counterpart fugue that goes on, but we nailed it. And that just puts a glow inside people that will bring them back and bring them back when you can provide that kind of inspiration, getting them to do things that they didn't think that they could do. I worked with Stephen over here to get what I wanted. I didn't demand it in a negative way, but I demanded it from a leadership perspective because I knew what I wanted. And when we did the little line as the deer, that was, I knew what I wanted in that, and I got it from you because you were willing to come to what it was that my vision of that piece of music was. Let's do another one. Let's take Jesus Loves Me. By the way, these are both terrific arrangements. The 4-part Jesus Loves Me is just gorgeous. This is an a cappella piece that you can do. It takes some time to put it together, but nonetheless, it is. All right, let's just do a cappella. And ladies, you all know this song, so you don't have to look down. Okay? Now, I'm gonna take us through a couple of things here, ladies, as we do this. And guys, you haven't had a chance to sing, but we'll get to you in a little bit. Maybe with that other song, because it has a solo line too. But we'll just start with the ladies. Jesus Loves Me.
Jesus loves me, this I know.
Now, let me hit that first pitch. I would like you to sing an ooh vowel on that pitch, but I would like it to be not out front ooh like I'd like it to be ooh, kind of like the Holy Spirit has entered the head of your body, ooh, or the wind as today. Just an ooh there. Go ahead. Ooh, go ahead. Good. Now, we're going to take that was beautiful. We're going to take that ooh, and we're going to turn it to an E by only modifying the back of the throat. And I'll do it like this. I didn't do this. Did I? I went. I want you to do the same thing. That's the E I want you to use on the word Jesus. Jesus, Lord, I got a little of that. I'd like it. Jesus, Lord. And it's not Jesus. That's Southern California talk. Jesus. No, Jesus. That's New England there. Jesus. It keeps the vowels in a line. We're jumping ahead on our outline a little bit, but let's just do that. Jesus. Ready? Now, did you notice my hand waving faster than you were singing? What do you think that would mean? That would mean I want you to go as fast as my hand. Right, okay. You're reading my mind. Good for you. All right? And did you see this? That means quit singing. That's all it means. Oh, you couldn't see? Okay, I'll do it with both hands. Let's try it again. Ooh, you're thinking ooh now. Good. What is the vowel on the first syllable of Bible? What is the vowel? It's an ah, yes. Bible. Keeps the vowels in unity. What is it we're trying to do here? We're trying to unify the voices into a sound. One sound. That's a choir. Otherwise, you've got soloists singing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which is all over the place with the soloists. But I did one other thing that you caught on. You read my mind. You did a wonderful job doing it. I paused. I created space. And you can do that. Creating space demands attention from the audience. When you create silence, you've drawn them toward you. Jesus loves me, this I know. You have them. You have them. And you will notice that when you conduct this way, when you bring the voices in unity that way, that the people in the audience will begin to lean forward. They'll begin to listen. They'll begin to lean forward. And one of the most remarkable things that happens, and this is something I was going to talk about later, but it works now too, there's a cycle that occurs in a performance of a song, in the inspiration of a song. It starts with you, well, it starts with the Lord and you being used by you to create the inspiration of a piece of music. That then is produced by the choral members that you have, the choir that you have, the sound that you want. That feeds the congregation. That feeds the audience. They feel the same spirit. And I didn't mean to ignore you over here. I apologize. They feel the same spirit. And as a conductor, you can tell when the congregation and the audience feel the same way about it that you do.